Hello, and welcome to Shatter Our Souls with Novaria. Today, we're tackling the 150cc All Cup Tour Itemless. And honestly, at this point, I think it's pretty clear that this is doable. I more so have this here as video evidence of having done it. But I want to go into a couple of things that make this challenge unique compared to other challenges that come up when it comes to gaming. A lot of people end up focusing on one of two basic rules. Either they focus in very heavily on using a specific type of gameplay style, or they focus in on removal of certain tactics or things that are overdone. An example of this would be avoiding the use of the Ultra Hand in Tears of the Kingdom, because it's a one-size-fits-all solution to virtually every problem. Oh hey, it's a blue shell, not aimed at me today. But the other side of it comes from the fact that a lot of these types of challenges in games come from the ideology that the player knows what they're up against. And I think this is something that is a really simplistic statement, but it's one that is nonetheless important. We as players, especially in older games now, get to a point where we know everything there is to know about a game as far as the fundamentals go. But we often end up missing out on smaller details. And going through and playing with ridiculous challenges often gives us time to focus in on the small details. Now, one thing that comes up with this a lot in my mind is that the itemless challenge is about efficient driving. I wouldn't say it's perfect by any means. You're going to end up with a lot of concerns about what routes to take and so on and so forth. Generally speaking, ideal driving lines are tight, close to the edges, and use a fair number of boosts of any variety. You want high speed to be your best friend because that is all you have, for the most part, during the course of this particular challenge. You can't use a red shell on the third lap and knock your opponent down just enough to get to the goal at first. It doesn't work in an itemless challenge. And so your two goals are going to be avoidance. I don't even know how that hit me. And your second goal is going to be efficient driving. So, perfect. Right? That's all there is to it. Just drive good. But there is, in many ways, something that is understated that doesn't exactly get voiced very often in this. And that's, you need to understand your course. You need to know your turns. You need to know how tight to make them. You need to know the ins and outs of what makes the race easier, harder, or anything in that vicinity. Now, I laughably often go with the mentality of we'll find out when we get there kind of thing. How do I want to word this? When you get to later difficulties, when items start flying, it's less about how good you are at dodging opponents, which, don't get me wrong, dodging opponent items is important, but it becomes more about trusting your muscle memory and less about trusting your gut. Or trusting your muscle memory and your gut, not necessarily your memory of the track. And the reason is because once we get past this particular All Cup Tour, a new difficulty gets unlocked. And this new difficulty is, of course, the All Cup Tour. The All Cup... Not difficulty. Not the All Cup Tour. Mirror mode. There we go. Mirror mode is the antithesis of a racing game. Effectively, It says, hey, you got good enough at the game that you can beat it on any difficulty we throw at you. That's fine. We're gonna mess with your muscle memory. The idea behind mirror mode and why I personally think it was brilliant to add it is because effectively you have increased the game's longevity exponentially. Because when every single track is mirrored, your visual tells that you would usually use to figure out where to go next or how to handle certain aspects are gone. What you have instead is effectively you're just trying to follow the track as best you can, good, bad, or otherwise. And for me, I always liked, when I was a kid, I suppose, I struggled with mirror mode a lot. I was too reliant on my standard everyday practices and habits. And well, they definitely did serve me well in the most part. It made most tracks easier to complete over time. It also left me with a kind of difficult situation where anytime I had a problem where my muscle memory alone buggered up, there really wasn't much I could do at times. Oh my goodness. Alright, I should not have hit the boom boom. I definitely was having an off day that day. Anyways, all this is to say that mirror mode increased the longevity because what was originally the hardest difficulty, being 150cc, was just playing the game normally. But doing it on mirror mode made it so that the game itself tested every aspect of a player's toolkits and every aspect of what made the game challenging, but also every aspect of a player's reaction and general know-how. And so in unlocking mirror mode, we're actually going to see that some tracks are kind of the bane of my existence going forward. Some tracks are perfectly fine. I could beat Luigi Circuit any day of the week on mirror because my muscle memory isn't necessarily going to be buggered up too badly by doing that. They got wet. But other tracks that are more closed off, like let's say Mushroom City, end up being very difficult because it fights with my muscle memory in such a way that I end up taking the wrong turn occasionally. Because why wouldn't you? You need to go right, nope, you're going left. And so on and so forth. Ironically, the players that are going to have the hardest time with mirror mode are the players that have had the most experience in other modes. Players that rely on their, hey, monkey, knock it off. People that rely solely on their muscle memory are going to end up in a situation where they very well could make mistakes that they otherwise wouldn't. So, I will give mirror mode a 8 out of 10 and a extra gold star for frustration because it made Mario Kart Double Dash absolutely heavenly hard for me for a very long period of time. That's not to say that other things didn't. Stuff like the All Cup Tour and being an endurance challenge kind of was a little more difficult than I would have otherwise expected. But it was also being played primarily at a time where I had access to other Mario Karts. While Double Dash was very much my first Mario Kart, Mario Kart Wii was the one that I spent a lot of time with at that point in time. Just due to the fact that it was bigger and there were, instead of 16, 32 tracks. Monkey, I get it, you're getting bored, but Seriously. We're gonna make a mistake if we start doing the beep beeps. Anywho, because I played a lot of Mario Kart Wii or Mario Kart 6, depending on which version of the statement you would like to go with, I ended up having mixed muscle memory because I was at times actively twisting the controller when playing Double Dash and struggling to turn when playing Wii. And so I kind of have to laugh that they were concerns that cropped up a lot of the time. But yeah, I don't know. Anyways, we are about a cup in already, and things are looking up. We've had one misstep with a second place finish, but I'm sure at this point in time, a second place finish isn't the end of the world. The thing about the All Cup Tour is that, generally speaking, it's an endurance challenge. It's not something that is meant to be something that is... how do I want to word this? It is meant to be difficult. But it's meant to be difficult in a... You have oh so much time to do this. You have to do it all start to finish, play the entire game. Now, as a kid, I used to blitz through all 4 cups and then some. Just on the basis of why wouldn't you? Before school in the morning in a 2-hour block that I was at just waiting to leave and get ready to go. But the thing is that I managed to do this in such a way that I could beat all 4 cups in one sitting very easily. But the All Cup Tour accomplishes more by saying, yeah, you're going to do all 4 cups one after another as a endurance challenge that's going to really test what you're capable of. Oh, that is the most unfortunate spot for a blue shell I've ever seen. It tests the player's endurance, it tests their knowledge, it tests all the little bits and bobs. But the issue is that it's actually not as much of a test as you might think. Generally speaking, if you have 3 of the 4 cups absolutely mastered, then the reasonability of this increases exponentially. Because theoretically, you don't need to be good at every track in the All Cup Tour. Your margin for error in the first game, in a single or in 4 races, is you can get 4 races. But if you miss any of them, there is a possibility you will lose. But if you take the opposite and you have the All Cup Tour, where now we're jumping to 16 races, suddenly you can lose 1 or 2 races. Heck, you can come in last place and have absolutely no concerns. That's kind of the issue with the All Cup Tour as a whole. It being an endurance challenge means once you reach a certain point, the game stops being about finishing in first place, and it becomes about just finishing the game. Now, obviously, you're going to run for 160 points as best you can, but generally speaking, 160 points only does so much. Okay, whoever threw that shell, you have my respect. Anywho. So, all that in mind, we're in race number 6. And I suppose what I will say as a kind of capstone to the All Cup Tour thoughts. That was rude. The capstone to the thoughts on All Cup Tour are effectively that the game does a good job at allowing the player to really get immersed in the world of Mario Kart as a whole. And it also makes sure that every single race, every single track is important to some extent, with the only oddball being that you need to finish off with Rainbow Road. But while I was doing this, my friend and I were actually actively going through the math of how far you would have to get and how many first place races you need to get, how many times would you have to knock first and second down before we would be in the clear. And generally speaking, if you're dealing with a single player who comes in second 24/7, you would be able to come in last place for about 3 races. 2 to 3 races. If you have second place consistently in second place. But if you have somebody who is consistently in last place, their ability to finish off at the very top is absolutely abysmal. Their chance of getting to the top is, wow, 8th place. They get 8th place, 8 races. Congratulations. It is mathematically impossible for them to succeed and stuff like that. And so, while it's a endurance challenge and it's a challenge of consistency, it is also one that, if done properly, you will end up in a much more reasonable spot overall. Gotta love the cataquack. It wasn't me this time. One thing I will mention as a kind of pseudo statement is I personally, as a kid, focused in on the baby characters, the light characters. Typically, Baby Mario, Toad, Toadette, Monkey. Why are you pushing me into the water? Monkey was having a day. I typically focused on Toad, Toadette, Baby Mario, Baby Luigi kind of characters. Partially because the slower speed and better handling made for an easier time for me. But also having the triple mushroom meant that I could take a lot more of the basic shortcuts I was supposed to. Oh, Blue Shell. Okay. Monkey, you've kicked enough. So for me, it was a lot of my strategies were based on being more efficient in my driving lines. But once you get into speedrunning territory, once you get into trying to get the absolute best times, there is absolutely no way that you can do anything other than a heavyweight characters. And reality is because characters like Bowser have by far the best vehicle for high speed and one of the worst vehicles in terms of handling. The point of that cart is specifically that it's meant to be a how do I want to word this? It's supposed to be an absolute beast on straight lines, and a little more questionable on the wider turns. But the reason why that cart in particular is so ideal for a speed run is because with enough boosts, this vehicle is absolutely unstoppable. Now, why it needs 6-wheel drive, I still don't understand, but who knows? Maybe it's just me being me. And even Wario and Baby Luigi got hit by the big blue boom. So I think we're in okay condition, still in first at the very least, and near the end of the second cup worth of races. Actually, I think we might have passed it at this point. But each cup being a four races in a row, one after another, some have some really high highs and some have some really low lows. This goes for any cup in the entire franchise. Example being Toad's Circuit in, I believe it was Mario Kart DS, being just a standard loop. It didn't really do much. It was too wide, not enough item boxes, so it was more or less just a track for getting used to the controls. But there are other ones that came up as being highlights, like Luigi Mansion, for example. And I think I kind of like that mentality. We all need the harder tracks for their complexity, or rather we want them for their complexity, but we also need the more basic tracks for just the basic tracks. We need something that allows players to start at a certain point. See, I am an individual who's been playing this game since I was, well, it came out in '03, so I guess I was 6 years old. And the reality is that I have a lot of nostalgia for Mario Kart Double Dash. But along with all of that nostalgia also comes just a lot of muscle memory, a lot of practice over the years. I didn't start as a 150cc player. There was no way I could play 150cc reasonably without getting anything close to and still get anything close to first place. There we go. But the reason I want to bring this up is because to do this challenge with virtually any other Mario Kart, we'll run into the issue of Mario Kart Double Dash has some milder rubber band AI, but it also has the more partner aspects. I have somebody to hang out with and play a game for a couple hours. And I think that really sets Mario Kart Double Dash apart in the Mario Kart franchise as a whole. Because it's one thing to have a game that is considered reasonably easy or difficult or whatnot. Or it is one thing to have a game that is considered easy, considered feel-good gaming. I swear to goodness, Diddy Kong, you are causing a lot of issues today. All this feel-good gaming, this easy-to-approach gaming was important for this particular challenge. Because if you jump into a game with ridiculous rubber banding that is incredibly difficult right off the bat, then you're going to end up in a circumstance where the challenge is not going to be... It's going to be more about how well you manage frustration. Mario Kart Wii, for example, is notorious for the getting carded statement, where the AI and bad RNG can make or break a run. There were times where making or breaking a run came down to how lucky am I going to be today. The difference between a gold star and a less than stellar mark was actually pretty notable. Mario Kart Double Dash, on the other hand, didn't have the ranking system to begin with, but also it had a very... how do I want to word this? Its approach to AI and competition was very different from prior games. The original and Super Circuit had very strong AI because they wanted the game to have longevity. They wanted... they The AI was also strong partially because they had a better view and easier time playing the game than a lot of people would. Jump into Mario Kart 64, and while in earlier difficulties the game is reasonable, once you get into the point where you're hitting 150 mirror mode, the AI straight up cheats to get what it wants. And in Mario Kart Double Dash, it was the first game that really tried to make things as fair as possible for both the player and the AI. Okay, I just ran over Diddy Kong. Um, but the point is that I'm trying to get at is that because a lot of the tricks and problems that were in Mario Kart 64 were removed in Double Dash, you ironically end up in a circumstance where the game is more fair in the player's perspective and a lot easier to get ahead than in other games. Anywho, we are cracking into my favorite track, bar none, always will be, Wario's Coliseum. Wario's Coliseum is... I think I've always struggled to actually word what it is that makes this track so unique, so memorable for me. Now, I've mentioned about the fact that it was a difficult track that I always ended up running into the walls or flying off the edges because of course I did. But Mario Kart Double Dash did something very unique with this course. And this course is the runner's paradise. There are moments where it's easy to dodge a red shell or dodge even blue shells with enough luck. But the big bonus with it actually comes from the fact that, okay, really? The big bonus with this track is that for me, being the individual who's usually the driver, the technical aspect of being okay or decent at this is kind of important. It makes the track itself more unique and more interesting most of the time. Along with that, when you're dealing with item play in here, a lot of the time the items end up being kind of caught in weird spots. I'm gonna gesture very gently over towards the spiral. The spiral ends up with green shells bouncing off left, right, and center, and while that's not necessarily a problem, it is something that is no okay, really? It is something that is notable because the trajectory of the green shells in that spiral are very difficult to keep on top of. Oh wow, I am having a really hard day today. Maybe I should just focus on driving for a little bit, hey? The point I'm trying to get at is that there's a certain level of unpredictability in this track that other courses simply don't scratch the itch for. So for me, yes, Baby Park is a good track for players that like the use of items. But if you're looking for something even more unpredictable, Wario's Coliseum does definitely have something to scratch that itch. Alright, 4th place. And we went from having an almost perfect one-track buffer to effectively having to ace the next 5 tracks, relatively speaking, in order to maintain the lead over Wario and Baby Luigi. Now, what's funny is that Wario, Baby Luigi, Standard Luigi, and Donkey Kong are all effectively fighting for what I would consider to be second place. I personally believe that we got this, and second place seems rather fitting for these lovely competitive individuals. Did they go into the did they go in the hole? They did not go in the hole. They were close though. Um, Another aspect of this that I don't think gets the love it deserves is the melee mechanic. Now, in Mario Kart Double Dash, you have that kick or the punch system, and that kick or punch system on its own doesn't actually exist when playing solo. The system is admittedly a little bit flawed because of that. But when you're playing with a friend, you have another option for taking down or defeating opponents as you go through the course. Is it necessarily something that you're going to use every single track? No. But it is something that gives each and every character that one last leg up that they might need in order to really dive in and get and complete the track. For me, it's not much of a, it's becoming a bit of a crutch in this particular challenge, because as time goes on, enemies get better with using items and more consistent at it, meaning that effectively, while you can drive faster, they can too, and they are much more aggressive than they were in the past. So having a means of, we'll say, dispatching opponents as you go on is definitely an important piece that you're going to need going forward. Anywho, we are down to the final 4 tracks. DK Mountain, Baby Park, what other one are we missing at the moment? Oh, Yoshi's Island, and, of course, we need to tackle Rainbow Road. And going into this, I believe that each cup has... I don't want to word this. The further into the game I got, the more attached I became to the cups. The Mushroom Cup is admittedly my least favorite cup in the game, just because it was meant to be a more tutorial-esque cup. The driving wasn't intended to be all that difficult. It wasn't intended to be this chaotic mess that some other tracks become, like Wario's Coliseum. But it does enough that I never feel as though I am left wanting more, if that makes sense. I know that I can play the game and I can play the tracks at any point in time, and the Mushroom Cup tracks just kind of, they get scratching that itch, but they never really end up getting where I need it to. Flower Cup, of course, is my next up. Generally speaking, the Flower Cup ups the ante in terms of track difficulty. And for a primarily driver, this is great for me. But it adds in courses like Daisy Cruiser, it adds in Waluigi Stadium. Staples of the game that really set the groundwork for the Flower Cup to be more difficult and, in my opinion, more enjoyable than the prior one. Then we get into the Star Cup. Yoshi Circuit, you have DK Mountain. And these 2 tracks are among my favorite now as an adult. Admittedly, Flower Cup used to be more favored in my opinion over Star Cup, but it has since changed just on the basis of my tastes have changed. And this cup really has me just, I love it. It is by far one of my favorite cups, just on the basis of it's a good cup. And then, of course, we have the Special Cup. And Special Cup, while it does have one dud in there, by far and away it has one of the most consistent track setups out of anything at this point. Okay. Well, good news, bad news. Good news is we won't be struck with lightning. Bad news is we can't strike with lightning. Um, I I don't think I've ever had the lightning in hand before, or at least it's been a long time since. Oop. All right. So, just to make sure the rules are clarified, I can run into items on the track, but using them intentionally is what the issue is. Not that I'm not allowed to touch or use items or touch items on the track, as that adds a whole other layer that is very difficult to get around. Anywho, looks like Wario and Baby Luigi are, yeah, they got a sizable lead. And I get to say that I actually got to use the shortcut in the or under the scales in a itemless challenge. So I gotta say, I'm feeling pretty good about this right now. And I hope that this is the successful one. By the way, this track right here is why I said that regardless of what happened, this All Cup Tour was going to get uploaded. And with that, we have to say goodbye to Yoshi Circuit and say hello to Baby Park. And at this point, we're sitting at 126 points. Theoretically, if we get first place, that would mean that the final race is a non-factor or non-issue. So, let's see what we end up with. I personally have I've always found that this track ends up being a really good basic track, but it's one that just doesn't suit me. And I know that there are some tracks that have higher or lower placements just on the basis of the game that you're playing it in. But this is by far, in my opinion, the best version of Mario Kart's Baby Park, with the only one that comes anywhere close being Mario Kart 8, specifically 8 Deluxe. The reason why is because 8 Deluxe's Baby Park has 12 racers instead of 8, which increases the amount of chaos, and players can still hold and to use 2 items at a time, meaning that effectively the main challenge of Mario Kart's Baby Park is still there. The only questionable aspect of it is whether or not the most questionable aspect of the Mario Kart 8 version is how it handles when people get hit by items. Okay, Rainbow Road is a non-factor. We have enough points to be the winners of this particular cup. But as I was getting at, sorry, squirrel moments. The issue with Mario Kart 8's item system compared to Double Dash is that Double Dash's item system is meant to send the player into a more, I don't want to say it's a more challenging circumstance. Rather, it makes for, there's more of a tumble system, if that makes sense. When you get hit by a red shell, you tumble forward for a moment and then you get to start driving again. But for Mario Kart 8, it stops you dead in your tracks. And it means that you effectively have to start accelerating from next to nothing. This makes the item system in Mario Kart 8 more punishing than the item system in Double Dash. And that's kind of a circumstance that is going to be notable going forward. I do believe that if I were to attempt this challenge on a second game, Mario Kart 8 would be the one. Mostly because, aside from Mario Kart Double Dash, it is the game I have the most experience playing. And I think that I could probably make this challenge work. The hard part would be the consistency at 200cc. But, dare I say, not a huge issue. You know, it makes me question, what would 200cc look like in Mario Kart Double Dash? I'm pretty sure at this point somebody's modded it in, but it's not something that I think I've ever really paid enough attention to. But, ooh, yay. How far away? Oh, that's not bad, actually. Might still be able to... Oh, wow. Really? I am getting carded today. It's great. It's awful. I don't like it. I love it. Anyways. Mario Kart 8's whole system has the 200cc. When it was first unveiled to be a playable game mode, I avoided it, saying it's not part of the original game, no big deal. I don't mind, it's not a huge issue. But going back and playing it again, I want to say it was about a month and a half after 200cc came out, there was this it scratched that itch in a way that the rest of the game wasn't. It became more about learning the tracks and how to handle the ridiculous speed. And a single mistake at 200cc could be the end of your run. And of course, I'm a perfectionist when it came to that. So I always tried to have the gold trophy, but not just the gold trophy, but the absolute highest ranks I could, the 3-star ranks. Because why wouldn't you? Or not 3-star, it was S rank. And why wouldn't you? If you have the opportunity, go for it. But anyways, here we are, the final 150cc cup of Mario Kart Double Dash completed. And with all of this being said, if you like what you see, I encourage you to drop a like, leave a subscribe, and we'll catch you next week when we start tackling Mirror Mode. I'll be honest, Mirror Mode is going to be maybe a few more surprises. That's where I'm going with this. You know, I wonder why Peach Beach had this at first. I never realized that. It took me a long time to realize as a kid that there was anything back there. I think it's just a set of item boxes or something, but regardless, it is something a little bit more unique.